There was a large company selling and repairing white goods as part of a department store, and they were looking for an assistant for their mobile repair service. Soon after applying, I started traveling with a young gentleman who was keen talking about the teachings of Billy Graham. He used to drive to the private homes of people, and I worked alongside him. He kept preaching to me all about his faith, which he was unconditionally dedicated to. He was very friendly and happy working with me. We repaired many washing machines, but I did not see any of the machines and dryers we got to love when in Europe. That employment felt like a holiday and was enjoyable. I worked with them for a while, spending lots of time outside, happy to be away from home. Magda was not happy about me coming home so tired that I could not be bothered going house to house with her. She was also not happy for my feeling tired, so that I could not spend much time attending the most important district assemblies and Kingdom Hall. Unfortunately, the company I was working for was going through hard times, needing to dismiss some of their workers. I was once again one of the lucky ones, and was told that regrettably I had to search for another job. This felt as if huge bricks had fallen on my head. At least I was continually creating landscapes in my works of art, amongst which I painted images of Hobart City. Somebody I knew at the National Gallery in Hobart assisted me to display those works with the option to profit from them. Magda started to show some interest in my paintings, and I decided to help her with an accelerated method I developed, teaching her the basics in painting, using a variety of mediums. She preferred acrylic painting best, but her other activities were still the absolute priority. I was happy to start her on a very beneficial and relaxing hobby. In the meantime, I tried very hard to find more suitable employment, particularly in the academic sector, but it was not to be for a while yet. From time to time, I flew over to Melbourne to seek different types of employment. Without any work, there was no income, and at this time, as mentioned, I had no idea that there existed a welfare system in Australia I could also benefit from while searching for suitable occupation. Then I discovered that both Sydney and Melbourne universities looked more promising, for both of them were willing to let me know when a position became available. Every time I returned home from those trips, Magda told me all about her wonderful pioneering activities, and excitedly spoke how happy she was being baptized into this faith. I took yet another job while still living in Hobart, this time with a fruit and flower grower just behind where we lived. Every morning I walked to work and home in the evening. They were a husband and wife team and very friendly people. They supplied herbs, fruits, and lots of flowers to department stores in and around the city. My duties were varied, mainly tending the earth, helping with their worm farm, and planting seeds and bulbs. Later I also helped them load the trucks with pot plants, flowers, Christmas trees, etc. The farmer's wife often offered us home-baked pastries and coffee or tea. The whole day long we always had a blaring radio at work, but working in the fresh air with plants was the best thing that could ever happen. I enjoyed that job, and both husband and wife became my friends. I kept sharing some of the activities my wife with her brothers and sisters engaged in by walking with them when they went door to door, as I wanted to know how they felt doing what they did. On one occasion, a noisy little dog attempted to bite my shoes, making me jump up and down as I tried to walk. It must have looked so funny, but I was not sure if she even noticed. There were certainly some very memorable moments. However, I felt like a prisoner when she literally forced me to feel obliged to share those activities she considered being most important. Unfortunately, my sentence seemed never-ending. With all my hobbies, whether they were liked or not, some of my interests she appeared to like. For instance, painting in oils. I kept painting cityscapes of Hobart, his cat and fiddle arcade, the harbor, and so forth. Displaying and eventually selling them was something Magda also liked. Especially profiting from such endeavors interested her. I made a suggestion like taking some smaller paintings, created by myself, and visiting people. This way, I started going house to house with her, and interesting a lot of folk. Sometimes we sold them, sometimes she attempted to take them round the shops, and was able to sell the smaller works of art quickly. That pleased her immensely. I was able to exhibit several of my paintings at the National Gallery. I remember lots of people showing interest in those works, and one of them was a politician from the local government in Tasmania. Once he wanted to go to a local sauna and swimming pool with me, and asked me if I was like all other French artists. Being quite naturally worried, for I was definitely not what he might have hoped for, he insisted that I should visit him in his hotel room one evening. I was shocked by his desire to be engaged in possibly homosexual activities, and I never attempted to see him again. It indeed felt like a nightmare. He must obviously have erroneously thought of me in his dreaming mind, that I might have similar tendencies. However, I wanted to think kindly, as I exclaimed within my mind, "My nightmare friend, not all artists of French origin, or from other countries, are, as you may have hoped for." Also during this time, I was discreetly buying books and hiding them from Magda, in addition to those which I had already taken with me amongst my other personal belongings. I loved reading them, as I still do. It is so beautiful to hold a book in my hands and smell their unique aroma. Many of them were expensive textbooks related to human anatomy or neurosciences and psychology in German or English. Some of them, however, were either science fiction or UFO-based. There were so many books written about them, and some were simply untrue. However, they were replete with fine imagination and lots of guesses. Unfortunately, a few of my most valuable textbooks, copies of my essays on human behavior, and many of my fiction books disappeared from time to time. Amongst them were George Adamski's Flying Saucers Have Landed, and Inside the Flying Saucers. They may not have been entirely correct about the reality of intergalactic travelers George was involved in, but they were my books, some of which had been given to me a long time ago. Later, Magda confirmed that she was eliminating, even burning my books, which apparently promoted devil worship. She hoped and demanded that if I truly loved her, I would not mind or be angry with her help in getting rid of those satanic books, which included irreplaceable psychology-related literature. Obviously, she could not see the difference between a textbook and a science fiction novel. I was flabbergasted, speechless, and shocked. I felt frozen somewhere in mid-air, yet kept my cool. I uttered no words for a very long time, but when I found copies of George Adamski's books at an antique bookstore, I had to have them. From then on, I decided to keep all my belongings and books in a box I could lock, but I discovered that my valuable books were still disappearing, one by one, and, interestingly, were replaced with worthless Jehovah's Witness literature. This time, I felt the need to talk to her in an amicable way about how wrong she was in eliminating what belonged to me. Her response was that she was only doing what was right, and doing everything to please her God, Jehovah. And if I had any sense or love in my heart, I would get rid of all those evil books I collected throughout the years. Those books, particularly my textbooks, were worth hundreds of dollars. Without saying anything, I put all the Bibles, magazines, and books related to their movement I had been given into a tin container in the backyard, poured fuel over them, and had a bonfire. When she felt very troubled, I told her gently, "All those evil books are now being eliminated," then strictly instructed her never to touch my belongings again. She sobbed a little and called me by a number of curly words. Would this perhaps teach her a lesson? I had never been brought up like that, therefore damaging someone else's belongings has always been foreign to me. Here I was, having my personal valuables being burned, because Jehovah's Witnesses considered them as evil. "If you really love me, you would get rid of them," she repeated over and over for days. I borrowed many books from the library on subjects of health, nutrition, the human body, and astronomy. Some of those books were also burned, and I had to pay large sums of money by way of reparation. I was lectured over and over again that Satan was very powerful, and to change the minds of the faithful servants of the Lord, he presented marvelous signs and created false hopes and expectations. Apparently, this was also written in the Bible. According to their wisdom, those books were very dangerous. One can see what kind of dilemma I had to put up with. It was enough to turn anyone completely against them and their belief. From time to time, we visited the Strohbachs in Lena Valley, and our time was often spent reading the Bible in turns. On one of those occasions, when it was my turn, I deliberately read it using an American speech pattern, because the words I was reading were printed in the American way. There was a pause, and a while later, Siegfried asked me why I chose to read God's words in an ugly American accent. As they were looking at each other, I asked him who could truly judge American being ugly. Being German, he did not like the American language, he exclaimed. I explained to them that all Jehovah's Witness literature originated from that country, and out of respect I chose to read that passage in American. Furthermore, I have never taken any teachings related to that school of thought seriously. I was bitterly criticized. However, it did not have the effect they hoped to have on me. I was not going to be embarrassed to have read that passage in American. Hobart and Lena Valley in particular bring back some very interesting memories. For example, little Annette sitting by a wooden fence and letting the nanny goats chew her hair, covering her head in their saliva. And when she was told she should not let those animals chew her long hair, as usual she would giggle, saying, "I like it," or "I don't know." One other time, when visiting the Strohbachs, and having decided to sleep overnight at Magda's insistence, rising very early in the morning, our once-in-a-lifetime breakfast is worth remembering. It was prepared in a health-conscious way, for Ruth was interested in holistic well-being. There were jars of sesame seeds, nuts, sunflower kernels, homemade bread, honey, tea, and coffee on the table. Interestingly, Siegfried sat very close to Magda. In fact, Magda was literally leaning on his chest. I sat in front of them, observing how far they were going to go with their comedy sketch. But I was not going to make any remarks or facial expression. They behaved like a married couple, or even lovers, who had met again after a long separation. Was it a theatrical display to see what effect it would have on me? They may have thought of me being incapable of noticing. I was not going to get stirred nor show any emotion, just to make a point. They looked deeply into each other's eyes, smiling. Ruth had also noticed the situation, but ignored it. Magda was her old self again, highly excited and very talkative. Then they began to share their spoons. Siegfried was taking spoonfuls of sesame seeds and honey, putting them in his mouth, and then putting the same spoon in hers. She was thoroughly enjoying the experience of sharing each other's juices. A very unusual scenario indeed. Magda was first licking the spoon, partially, and then putting it in Siegfried's mouth. They kept doing this for a considerable length of time. Ruth and I looked at them and made no sound. It was like a very immature-minded youngster's game. Siegfried was certainly in his element, and knew what he was doing, apart from being extremely flirtatious. When this unique breakfast was over, and we were back in our room to pack our things before going home, Magda asked me, while hysterically laughing, to kiss her. In her small mind, was she perhaps teasing me? Was she aware what was really happening? I told her to wash her mouth thoroughly first, and she got extremely agitated, asking me if I was jealous or what. If she was not trying to make me jealous, why did she even ask? I told her that if I was somebody else, I would be jealous, and even perhaps kill her, but I was not that kind. I asked her again to wash her mouth, as I did not want to consume her boyfriend's juices. This time she deliberately asked me if I was jealous, as she was sharing the same spoon with Siegfried, and I asked her again to wash her mouth. Why did she need to ask me such a question? I explained that I was only cautious about other people's bugs, and that I did not want to have them transferred to me. Still agitated, she said, "Oh, I can do anything I like. He is my brother." Probably Siegfried also felt quite good about the situation, knowing how naive Magda was. Is it not interesting how some people can turn their partner's life topsy-turvy with their jealousies? For I remember how she kept asking me if this girl or the other woman was better looking than her. Had she got better lips than me? You were looking at her legs, were you not? I bet she has better breath than me, hasn't she? These were sentences I was subjected to on a daily basis when we were living together. While stubbornness shelters one from reality, open-mindedness reveals all of life's truths.